yourself,
Yes.
obviously.
Any story you want to tell us,
About your life.
Your liberty in the pursuit of happiness.
Gee, I don't know if Vicky's had anything happen in her
Yeah.
life lately.
Yes, I can shoot, yeah. Well, I can get messages.
Oh dear God.
My phone is on vibrate, but I can get messages. Okay, well, thanks everybody for showing up. And,
Thank you. And thank Boyd and Nancy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely, cozy living room.
So, thanks for sharing in advance. So.
Very special, Nancy. Would you like a chair or something? Want to come sit back here?
Standing is good for me.
Okay.
I'm just kind of, people are still kind of milling around, so I thought I should just wait until people settle down, or should I just start?
Somebody take my seat.
Did I
Wait
take
until-
your seat?
until-
Well, let's just get settled in here and then
I could just stand. I mean, the person could just
You
stand.
did not take my
whatever
seat.
makes you comfortable. Some people may be more comfortable.
Well, just because there's not enough seats.
Yes, there is.
We'll work it
I'm
out.
down.
You did?
I'm down for the count.
Is Jean coming? No?
He couldn't make it. He had like a test.
I know.
And
Okay.
then Matt couldn't come because he's allergic to allergens.
I don't give you any of this.
All right, we have to have a photo op later too.
Yeah.
Of course.
More.
All right, thanks, Vicky. You're
All right, well,
you're
so
on.
it's very scary for me to talk instead of sing.
No. Well, you can sing it.
Sing it.
No.
Would you prefer us not to actually look at you?
No, it's okay.
She's used to performing.
Sort of. So the story I'm going to tell is a story about how I learned how to tell the truth. Okay. So when I was 10 years old, my parents sent me to sleepaway camp for the first time. And I'd been living in one town for my whole life. I had a circle of friends, and suddenly I was thrown into a situation where I didn't know anybody. And I got to the sleepaway camp, and it was very rustic, and it was just, there were no screens in the bunks, and it was shocking. I had to like sweep the floors, and I was not happy about the situation at all. But the worst part of it was that I didn't know how to make new friends, because I had just lived in this one place all my life, and I just had my friends that I knew from school and whatever. So I was having a very hard time trying to figure out how everyone else got to be friends and how could I possibly do it. And I noticed that people got attention when they announced from their letters or whatever from their parents that their mother was having a baby. So I thought this could be a way for me to get some attention and maybe people will like me. So I decided to tell everyone that my mother was having a baby. And not thinking ahead that my mother was coming in a couple of weeks to visit.
That's because you were a child.
So I told everyone this, and at first it worked for a day, and then people forgot, and then I was kind of forgotten again, and I thought, this isn't working. So I got another letter from my mother, and I said, she's having twins. I got some more attention, but again, in a couple of days, people forgot about it. So then I really went for it and announced that my mother was having triplets. And now I became the star of the camp. And everyone was, knew who I was, and they were asking me about my mom, and I started to really get to know people, and that was great. Then my mother sent me a letter, this was by like the second week, saying that she had fallen down the stairs and broken some of her ribs. And I was so upset. I was crying about this, and everyone said, oh my gosh, what about the babies? And I was like, yeah, the babies, whatever. But anyway, I was just worried about her. So now it's, almost 3 weeks into it, and I'm realizing they're coming. What am I going to do? Because everyone's going to want to talk to my mom. And so I wrote my mother a letter. I said, dear Mom, I know I shouldn't have done this, but I told a lie. That you were having triplets because I wasn't meeting any friends, and so now I'm really popular, but now you're coming, and can you please just go along with this story if anyone asks you? And please ask Dad and Peter, my little brother, also, just tell them all, you know, to just go along with the story. I'll never lie again. I've learned my lesson, but I don't want to be embarrassed in front of all of these new friends that I have. So, so the day came, and as always, my mom was 2 hours late for the visiting day, and I was like the only kid left whose mother and family hadn't come, and I was having a terrible anxiety attack thinking that they had been killed in a car accident or whatever. And they finally came. I saw them across the field. It was a rainy day, and I ran over there, and I was like crying in relief that they were there, and I was so happy to see them. And then I showed them my bunk, and some of my bunkmates were in there with their parents, and they all had heard about the triplets. So they all started to congratulate my mother, who was kind of overweight, so she looked like, you know, I did announce that she had had them already. So they all said, "Where are the babies?" And I said, "Oh, they're just at home. Someone's watching them, you know." But my mother looked really good for 3 days after having triplets. But my father, he wasn't going to let me get away with this, and he started to try to tell people that wasn't true. And I kept yanking him away. He'd say, and I'd say, "Dad, come over here, take a look at this." So somehow I managed to get through the day, and it was incredibly stressful. And I remember that I was thinking, this is not worth it to lie. I will never do this again. And I was so happy when camp was over and I wouldn't have to see these people again. And then my parents sent me to the same camp again the following summer, which I really didn't like, but I guess they liked having me out of the house for a month. So the first day I got to camp, I see one of the girls from my bunk from last year, and she's like, "How are the triplets?" And I just thought, I can't deal with this again. I said, "They died." She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And I said, "It's fine." So anyway, that's my story.
That's a great story.
So this is the throne, right?
No,
Yeah.
where people are going to take from where they are, I think.
Oh.
Well, or they don't have to. Would somebody, would we
It's
like
kind
to
of
go
a
kind of
central
just around?
place.
Yeah, it is.
Whatever. I think everyone can
Rosalind?
see it from
Sure.
here.
Why don't we just go stay where you are?
Okay.
Hello?
Knock, knock. Come in.
Nancy, trick or treat.
Who is it?
We're storytelling.
Oh, it's Ann.
There's Ann. I'm so sorry.
You must have gotten lost.
We did. Over that way.
Come in, join us.
Good news is we finally gotten found.
All right.
So sorry. Whose story?
Well, you
I
missed. We
interrupt?
just started. You missed Vicky's, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
We've eaten,
Which was pretty funny, so you missed a good story.
so we're just
I
getting
got
going.
held up at work and then we got lost.
All right, I'm not here. You okay?
Isn't there another way?
Is there another way around? I don't know. I don't know this house.
I don't think so.
I think.
There's another way.
Is there a way for her to get around with that? She says yes. You can go around that way.
Oh, okay.
No, I wouldn't help.
Dog fight.
There's some gate. I'm wondering
No.
what's the
gate still up?
Yeah, yeah, Nancy's letting me.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, shall we give our
Rosalind.
attention to Rosalind?
Yeah. Rosalind.
Introducing Rosalind.
Should we let everybody take another minute? Okay.
Yeah, I guess people get settled now.
You can practice. Get your voice.
Yeah. Ready?
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Okay.
Let
me just stop. Everybody has to be quiet. Okay.
I'm really nervous about this.
Don't be.
Okay.
Okay.
I used to live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan there was a beautiful, there was an empty lot at 96th and Broadway, and they let people garden there. And then they decided to build a high-rise, which is still there at 96th and Broadway. And so the people that were gardening wanted to continue gardening. So the Parks Department decided to give them, in Riverside Park, at 90th and Riverside, 2 big plots that people could plant. And there was a big circular plot that everybody volunteered at. and then there was a very large rectangular plot that was divided up into subplots that everybody would have. And so what happened is, being the Upper West Side, there was another organization called Friends of Riverside Park. And the woman that was the head of Friends of Riverside Park was very jealous of the garden people getting these two plots. And she thought that the Parks Department should have never given us permission without going to the community board. So she decided that we shouldn't be there and brought the whole issue in front of the community board. Meanwhile, our people, the garden people that were doing the gardening, did what else do you do on the Upper West Side? You do a petition. And we got a petition over 2,000 names saying that it was good that we were there. So what happened is, because it was so controversial, the New York Times decided to come do a story about it. So they came in August on a very, very hot, sunny Saturday, and I was the only gardener working that day. So I was interviewed by the New York Times, and they took a picture, and it was going to be on the first page of the Metropolitan section. But that particular day, there was no other news going on. So they put my picture on the front page of the Times, and it was a picture of me giving this mint that I had to a mother and a father that had a dog and a child in a carriage. There was a jogger, and an older woman. So it was the mother, the father, the child and the dog, and an older woman looking, and I was giving them mint. Meanwhile, behind us was a jogger, jogging in Riverside Park. And this had become such a popular spot, there was a hot dog stand. So in the picture, it was also the hot dog stand. I mean, it was a fabulous picture. And so that's how I got my name in my picture. And I'd like to read you the last two paragraphs of the article that was in the New York Times. Rosalind Cherry, a computer consultant on Wall Street and one of the gardening volunteers, was handing out bunches of her proliferating spearmint to strollers to put in their tea. Quote, "The great thing is sometimes you don't even plant something and it grows," said Miss Cherry, a beginner at gardening. "It's like nature makes blossoms by itself, and then you start comparing it with your life and how you can blossom. You get very philosophical." That's how I was on the front page.
All right.
What a great.
Have the picture.
You know what? I found the article. This is like from 1980s. And so I found the article, but the picture was not with it. It was just the article.
So you're famous.
So, yeah.
The Times says they print all the news and stick the print.
That's right.
And so it was a good time to reshuffle if anybody needs to. So can I get your autograph?
On your arm.
I guess we're just going around in
You got
circles.
Jim?
I'm trying to look for one that Dave requested, so
Yeah.
why don't you skip me?
Janet?
No, I don't want to go some. If I'll pull up the Slack if there's Slack at the end.
Around? You have a story?
No, I don't.
Here, I got a story.
Dave.
Good day.
Dave's got a
All right.
story.
I'm going to tell you about the escape from Shangam Correctional Facility. All right? So the setting is, it's the 1980s, very conservative time in New York, in the country, development of the whole concept of maxi prisons, which are supposed to house some of the more notorious escape risk and problematic inmates. And New York State developed Shangam Correctional Facility, which is 12 miles south of New Paltz on the Waukegan Correctional Facility property. All right? And their idea in New York State was where we had 60,000 inmates, and most of the problematic inmates, either from an escape point of view or a trouble-causing point of view, were in these large maximum security prisons with 500-man cell blocks, big recreation yards, 50 acres inside the walls, and the superintendents knew who these problem inmates were, but you could never catch them. They were just too slick. So there in New York State, the idea was to take all of the problematic inmates and put them in one institution, thus helping all of the rest of the big maximum security prisons manage their population. So they developed Shangam Correctional Facility. I was there for the first 5 years. I had a full head of hair when I started, and that explains my predicament. Anyway, just to give you, and you got to really kind of try to visualize this. Shangam Correctional Facility is a big rectangle, and on the perimeter are 3 security fences, the most advanced security fences that the department had, with razor wire and special detection devices and the whole 9 yards. The interior consists of 4 units. Each one of these units has 64 men on the bottom tier and 64 men on the top tier. They have their own mess hall and their own recreation yard, as opposed to a place like Eastern that would have 500 men in the yard at the same time, 500-600 men in a mess hall. So it's built for control, camera, listening devices, the most security-minded superintendent, special staff, the whole 9 yards. Every bit of technology that was available to law enforcement and corrections was built into Shangam. And so in 1994, 4 inmates, and these 4 inmates would actually make the 2 inmates that escaped from Clinton Correctional Facility look like beginners. The least amount of time that any one of them was doing was 50 years. So you can imagine, because of their escape history or the nature of their crime. So anyway, they devised an escape plan from Shangam Correctional Facility, which was rather unique. And their plan was to using hacksaw blades, saw the way out of their cells and go into a internal courtyard with a 12-foot overhang and ceiling, a ceiling that was 40 foot high, but the whole center section of the courtyard was open because the state ran out of money. Initially, they were going to cap the whole thing. They didn't. So, but nobody could imagine anybody being able to get, because literally, I mean, even the best mountain climber could not scan a 12-foot overhang. So anyway, their plan was, which nobody else could see, was to insert actually a squeegee, which was attached to strapping and a cord, and they had done push-ups and go up to get on the roof and have a recent parolee climb a tree outside the perimeter fence with a crossbow, shoot a line across, and using weight belts with specially constructed hooks, hook them on those ropes and go right across the okay, and then drop down on the other side and get in the car with the parolee and have their freedom. That was their plan. Okay, so I'm going to read you the report of actually what happened. So this is the official report that came out shortly after the escape. It says between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m., 11/7/94, inmates Hart, Ryan, Proctor, and Buther did remove a single bar cut from the bottom portion of each of their cells, or B2 housing unit cell doors, exited their cells into the BU courtyard, where they climbed onto the courtyard roof overhang, utilizing a homemade 40-foot rope made of tied sheets, nylon strapping, and a 24-inch squeegee blade, reinforced with tied brooms and mop handles taped together. In other words, they put one broom handle after another broom handle, and that's how they got the squeegee in, and then they went hand over hand up on the roof. Let's see. All the aforementioned went undetected by B2 housing correction officers Bruno and Consul Officer Zach Moody. They made their way across the roof undetected down into the construction site on the east compound between the building and the perimeter fence. That whole area was cordoned off, fenced off, because they were doing some construction in that area, in which construction workers came in through a special construction gate on a daily basis. At 7:02 a.m., inmates Hart, Ryan, and Proctor, observed by Rear Tower Correction Officer Marion, used a 2x10x12 plank from the construction material placed on the taut wire fence, did climb said plank and jump from the taut wire fence into the area between the taut wire and the perimeter fence. They climbed the exterior fence through the razor wire, jumped down on the berm road, and ran into the wooded area on the east perimeter. Inmate Buther was apprehended at the construction site. In other words, Buther's watching these guys get themselves cut pretty badly and said, "No way, Charlie." He said, "I'm going to walk out. When the construction workers come in, I'm just going to walk out and pretend I left the tool in the car and then keep on going." Was apprehended at the construction site by C.O. Vance at approximately 7 a.m. Okay, so that's what actually happened. Now, all four of them ended up being caught. The first one, Buther, I just explained to you, was caught as he tried to get out the construction site. The second one, their plan. Well, I haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. See what I'm up against? So anyway, the second one, now they were running east, all right? There's about a quarter to a half a mile between the facility and 208. So they're running east. They all make it across the road. The second inmate, I think it was Proctor, he is spotted by a correction officer from Wallkill. Let me just back up a second. When the rear tower officer from Shangam saw them going over the gate, that information was relayed to Wallkill Correctional Facility. Wallkill's watch commander, who was the highest ranking person on the midnight shift, deployed probably a half a dozen to a dozen correction officers that arrived early, that always arrived early, and were sitting around waiting for the shift to begin, to the berm. So a Wallkill correctional officer sees Proctor, and he says, "Stop or I'll shoot." Proctor, not realizing that this correction officer didn't have a gun, stopped, turned around. He was taken down and handcuffed, radioed back for help. He was brought in. The third inmate, Ryan, actually was, well, let me just back up again. In the meantime, so we got two inmates.
No, he's not finished his story. He's not finished.
In the meantime, there's about 70 police cars, state police cars arrived. Helicopter, command center vehicle. There's probably 400 CERT members which surround that area, right? And on an escape, once somebody goes beyond the perimeter, the security of that facility, the state police are actually in charge. So they start sweeping the areas. Now, when they sweep the areas, they start with the one where they don't think the inmate is. So they swept west of the facility, then north of the facility, then south of the facility. In the meantime, a captain and the deputy superintendent from Wallkill are driving out to check on the Wallkill CERT team, and they see an inmate in the woods propped up against a tree. They bleeding badly. So they go get the inmate without any problem, take him back. So that's the third.
Why was he bleeding? From this
From the razor wire cuts. All three of them were cut very badly. So anyway, the last one we didn't get until the state police completed all of their searches, which took them till late in the afternoon. That particular inmate had totally covered himself with leaves, hoping that he would go undetected when the CERT team came through, or the state police came through, and then would be able to leave. And a correction officer from Wallkill spotted him and detected him.
Didn't they have dogs then?
Oh yeah, oh they did.
Dogs went
Yeah,
after?
yeah. So anyway, I could make a couple other ones, but I'm all well over my time according to my.
But the guy who was supposed to come and.
Oh well, I was going to get to that, but you and Jonathan are cutting me off.
What happened to the guy?
No, Johnny can't cut him off.
All right. So anyway, what happened to the guy? There was a couple things that foiled the plan. Unfortunately, they chose an alcoholic for a pickup man. So the guy arrived way early, right? Arrived way early. He had all this time to kill. He goes into a bar, then goes back to his car, falls asleep, sleeps through. The other thing that happened was that the perimeter security vehicles that go around the facility all the time, for some reason that night, one of them was stationary with his lights right in the area that the inmates were going to escape. So that's why, even though they were up there at 2 a.m, they didn't actually make their break until 7 o'clock. And just on a personal note, I have to end on a personal note. There was always competition between Wallkill, that was medium security, and even though they had been around forever, but the Shangam staff always kind of lorded it over. We're the macho, we're the real officers. You know, we're the real jail. And it was the Wallkill, and I was the superintendent at Wallkill at the time. So, we got a great deal of pleasure out of the fact that it was the Wallkill officers that caught everybody that.
Was it after that they put up the sign, "Don't pick up hitchhikers"?
Well, no, that probably was always there.
Okay.
But,
Thank you.
anyway. Sorry, I exceeded my time.
Have a
Guys.
seat. Do you two want to
You guys want to settle in before we?
I think I can hear as well here as anywhere else.
Yeah.
So,
I'm pointing to you.
You could put it on that table, closer.
Welcome, Frank.
We won't make you go all in.
I like that one, but I also like.
couldn't try, but
Make sure you do the old man.
I'll tell you what, it's in here, in case, this is very short.
I like all these, but
Just let me, I came across it and
that one's funny, so.
So who's next?
okay. I was looking frantically for one of the popular requests from Dave, but I came up with another one that's sort of related to tonight. And there's if this time is another one later on. But this one, since everybody was doing a lot of cooking, and Dave kind of gave this away to somebody he was talking to, but it's called My One-Page Cookbook. All right, and are we good to go, Jonathan? All right. I don't like cookbooks, rarely use them, and thought it was time to write my own kind of counter-culture cookbook, 1 page long. Cookbooks are a serious business in the publishing world. They outsell combined the Bible, War and Peace, the complete works of Shakespeare, and even all of Harry Potter. We have no less than 34 cookbooks in our own pantry closet. I know because I just counted them. If we weren't vegetarians, God only knows how many more we would have accumulated. I picked 2 of the thicker books to make a point. The Moosewood Restaurant low-fat favorite takes up 465 pages, while the Greens Cookbook tops off at 396 pages. Not only are there too many of them, but they are way too long. I do a good share of the cooking and most of the food shopping in our house.
Give me a break. Love you, Janet.
Lying was the theme. As vegetarians, we buy mostly organic, local when possible, belong to a CSA, and are fairly crunchy granola-ish. When I'm trying to throw together a meal, I should say when I'm preparing a meal, I don't want to first pick out one of the 34 books and then leaf through the 465 pages of, say, the Moosewood, only to find out that I don't have half the ingredients, and more importantly, much more importantly, I'm hungry and the family is hungry. We want food and we want it now. But we have our principles. We don't eat junk foods or conventional fast food. Here are some other basic principles and cooking concepts that I have promulgated in our household, at least for me. Don't waste food. This creates problems during the summer because the pickup date at our CSA farm is Tuesday, and by Friday, our produce is showing signs of wear and tear. So we must ferret out veggies that are wilting or developing telltale brownish spots in order to, and this is a related principle, use them up. My son Thomas likens this to turning us into human garbage disposals. He exaggerates, of course, and needs to get over it. Before I prepare a meal, I look at what we have in the fridge. So this probably means that the wilted kale or Swiss chard will be, if not the centerpiece, at least a major component of the meal. As a professional social worker, I learned in graduate school to start where the client is at. And when cooking, I like to start where the food is at, that is, the refrigerator. You don't start with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM. First, you start with the person. So why would you start with a cookbook, I ask. Once the perishables have been rescued from a premature trip to the compost pile, I focus on the idea of setting up a balanced protein to go with the greens. Did I mention that you cut off the brown spots? Grains and legumes are the usual choices. I like to steam the veggies and use a pressure cooker for the rice and sometimes the legumes. I read somewhere that these methods are better than boiling since water-soluble vitamins are not destroyed. Did I read that in a cookbook? The pressure cooker is fast as well as healthy, and you can cook a whole lot of stuff in it at once, saving not only time, but energy, that is, fossil fuel. One of my favorite pressure cooker meals is to cut up potatoes, carrots, cabbage, onions, and some hearty greens into the pressure cooker. So then when it's finished, smear the whole concoction with Dijon mustard. Ambrosia. My son Sean also likes to exaggerate and compare this to a generic overcooked mush. Stir-fried veggies and rice and tofu are another of my standards. Take whatever veggies you have on hand, chop them up, and throw them into the frying pan. using only a small amount of oil. You add whole grain rice pre-cooked in, you guessed it, a pressure cooker, and add that at the end. Pressure cooked rice always comes out perfect. For 1 cup of rice, add 2 cups of water, turn the stove up to high, and when the thingamajig on top wiggles, turn off the heat and just let the rice stand on the stove. Then, of course, there are easy-to-make pasta dishes for breakfast, cereal, or oatmeal, eggs once in a while, and hummus sandwiches and salads for lunch. Go easy on the desserts. Eat lots of fruits, blueberries, and cereal, and some almonds and walnuts. There you have it, a 1-page cookbook that is simple, quick, healthy, allows for individual adaptation, and uses what's available. Okay, for the sake of accuracy, I'll call it my 1.5-page cookbook.
And that probably fits into $2 a day.
Yeah. It might.
Okay, who's next? Going around? Once, twice, thrice.
Well, I guess I.
Who's yours next?
There's my stuff. Somebody else has got their stuff out. Can get it, because mine's in a bag somewhere.
Right here.
Oh, right here.
It's right there. There you go.
Sorry.
Introducing Pooja.
Okay. Well, I did 3 short pieces, so I don't need to do them just now. I could just do 1 short piece.
Is that my one over there?
1 from each stage for sort of memoir stuff. So this is like 70, Here I Come.
That's 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you know?
If you do it, I'll do it. You're kidding. No, I'm not. 2 old friends, Josephine and Pooja, lazing on the beach at Porto Palenque, chatting back and forth. We had spotted a blue and white petaled balloon billowing like a great diaphanous pom-pom chrysanthemum. It rose higher and higher in the azure sky, till the people hanging under its canopy were merely 2 specks, connected by a string to the boat beneath, far beneath. It was so beautiful, we were entranced, but still scared at the very thought. Could we really dare to be up there? We turned back to dozing, guidebooks and holiday reading. There were plenty of other things to do. By the 6th or maybe 7th day, we had been round the islands tip by boat, over hairpin bends to the other side, visited markets and churches, and walked, but still we hadn't done or forgotten it. We knew it was now or never, so we egged each other on along the water's edge to the parasailing booth. 2 young, handsome guys, deeply tanned and muscular, were bringing in the boat. A couple jumping off was enthusiastic. Fantastic, they said in unison. Weren't you scared, we asked. Not really. So we signed up, but there was still some apprehension in my gut. In no time, Joe and I were kitted out in bright yellow life jackets aboard the boat with 2 wound-up little boys, their dad, an uncle and aunt. We zipped off to the open waters where we were balanced in weight at each end of a double harness, instructed how to sit on small leather strips and tethered by buckles. Securely fastened, at least to our young captain's satisfaction, if not to ours, we were released out and up, gripping tightly to the ropes and gritting our teeth and faking a smile or 2. If our rope snaps, I dismissed that thought and looked out at this new world, but not yet down. Wind and sun on my face, I breathed myself into relaxation. In trust, out fear. In trust, out fear. It wasn't so scary, actually, experiencing the air, the height, the space. Another deep breath, and I looked down to the tiny boats immediately below, and we began to laugh. We yelled and waved to the boys that were away down. They couldn't hear a word, but we didn't care. All too soon we were ratcheted back down, our feet skimming over the water before landing on the boat. The wind picked up and spray Spray drenched us. Our dream boy captain skillfully changed directions. Time to return. Off the boat with 2 feet grounded in the sand, I was still on top of the world. 70, here I come.
Yeah, right.
I didn't get a picture of you reading.
Oh,
A
really?
picture of post-reading.
Oh, post reading, okay.
Who's next? Boyd, are you telling a story? Yeah. Okay, you're next.
All right. How I got into college and teaching. Back then, I was even more clueless than I am now. And as my high school career ended, I thought about where I would like to spend my next 4 years. And was pretty sure that no matter where I applied, they would be glad to have me. The only wrinkle was that when my cross-country coach in the senior year, who had come on board that year, had a different philosophy. He had been a football coach, and he thought that he should yell at the cross-country runners to get them all fired up. And I was the number 1 runner, and I quit. So when he said, I got a letter from Brown about you running there, you probably should be glad I didn't write back. So I was on the waiting list at Brown and rejected outright at Princeton. Okay, I'll just wait and go to Brown. That was my first choice anyway. So I waited. March, April, how's it going? Well, you're still on the list. May, June, I think we have enough in our class. You better look somewhere else. All right. Got a lot of letters from other schools, not real interested. So one of the things was I could join the military band and do that. But about late June, we had a friend of the family who was a professor of engineering down at Case, down the street. You know, we were living in Cleveland, and he said we could make a place in our freshman class for you. And one of my main goals in going to college was to get away from home. So I said thanks, but no thanks. So there it stood, and July rolled around, and the same professor went to a conference, engineering conference at Cornell. And he came back and he said, you know, I was talking to somebody over there, and they had accepted somebody whose first choice was Case, who we did not accept. And I mentioned that we had offered a place in our class, and we had still a place open, so might we exchange places? So he came back and he said, well, how would you like to go to Cornell? I said, I don't know, where is it? I said, well, they have a good engineering school there. So I looked it up on the map, and there was no way I could go without a scholarship. And so I remember the call and said, well, I can't go without a lot of help. So we'll see what we can do. So I think it was August 21st. I got a call from the engineering office at Cornell. Said, we're pleased to offer you a full scholarship in the engineering school. So get out the map, find out where it is, pack up the car, we're going. So I said, wow, that was really lucky. Well, within about 2 months of being in the engineering school, you know what? I don't think I want to be an engineer. But I can't afford to leave because I had the full scholarship as long as I was in engineering. So I stuck out engineering, sort of resisting it quite a bit. And then it was 1967 when I graduated, and there was a war going on. And Cornell, a lot of kids at Cornell were against the war. I was one of them. And I was pretty fed up with school, engineering, the United States, the war. So I said, I'm checking out. I'm leaving the country, and I don't know if I will ever be coming back. And there was a good way for me to do that, which was to join the Peace Corps, which I had already done the year before, signed up early, and I had trained between the junior and senior year of college. So whatever it is, I'm not going to be here for a while. So I went to the Philippines for 3 years and taught, and had a wonderful time there with the culture, the language, and the people were listening because you were supposed to know something. And then came back and was unlucky in the lottery, so I couldn't go back to school. So I signed on for another tour, 2 years in Thailand, and I taught some more. Very much closer to the war, we were in Thailand. And I still was pretty clueless. I came back and into a program in physical oceanography, because I thought that would give me a chance to go back to the Philippines and study, tidal waves and monsoons and things like that. Well, I didn't. And about a month into that program, I said, why don't you teach? It's been such, you've had such satisfaction and enjoyment out of teaching. Why don't you teach, even though some members of my family were not impressed with a teaching career. So I got my credentials in Washington State, taught in Seattle, and taught in New York, and New Jersey, and Scotland, and all these places, and have really enjoyed that choice. But it came about because I didn't know what I was doing, both in applying, watch Mooch there, she's gonna applying to school and getting into school and choosing something, and all kinds of things that I didn't accept, but I guess eventually it turned out all right.
We entered the red brick building, a warehouse for brown-skinned people, the multi-generational welfare families, the ones that are hidden away in the slums of America, the debris of a social machine that's based too much on greed and fear that leads to closed-heartedness. Fred and I had not grown up near such buildings. Broken doors, dirt, graffiti, men sleeping on the stoops, loud radio music, no grass around the buildings, abandoned car hulks, witness to where we were. We entered the building with not a little apprehension. These were not hallways we had often walked before, and our white skin announced that we were outsiders, and for most of the people living there, white skin usually brought trouble. The probabilities of violence were being calculated in our minds without our having to be aware of it. The subtle scanning process. Was this the day when we would be the innocent visitors caught up in some impersonal, pedestrian explosion of frustration? The universe's distribution of pain and elation was not something I was privy to. I had not received a television from on high. I had not received a telegram from on high that morning with engraved assurance of safe passage. So the murmuring of the mind's low-level call to terror was there in the background as a surety to me. We would at least not be caught unawares. I was already quietly scared. As we entered the elevator, the strong odor of urine signaled the crossing of a threshold. We were entering a place in which the ground rules weren't clear. Although clearly together, a glance showed that we were both immersed in our own private negotiations. We entered the apartment. The living room is empty, save the vinyl-covered couch, the TV, a kitchen table, and 3 chairs. There are other rooms off to the left, and the sounds of some morning game show filled the space. These are the notes I wrote later in the car. Mother. Eyes of tears, fears behind sorrows and acceptance. Seeing each thing of love and hope slip away, knowing that all of it will pass through in a form she dreads, all joy being temporary. This child who was frail and early at birth, this retarded child who was not supposed to live, has persisted some 21 years, in and out of hospitals and buses and subways. No cabs, no money, no relief, no surcease, no ease, no leisure. Always concern, always sorrow. And always, too, the love. Behind the sorrow was the love these two have shared. The love born of the promise and the hope of the mother for her firstborn. This child who has brought his mother from earth to heaven to hell and back to earth over and over. And through it all, there is the abiding, the loving presence, the willingness to witness the struggle of this flawed child to walk in human form. The unspeakable compassion of a loving mother bearing witness to the pain of her child. And Leonard, half here, half gone already, exploring newly again the inner landscape he only partially left in order to walk confusedly this human labyrinth, moving inexorably toward the release from this pain, this cancer, which has come unseen, unbidden, not understood. There's no communication from mother about this, none being possible. There's just the fact of the pain she can only partially alleviate with the medicine given by spoon. Pain, grabbing the valves in a vice so tightly that breath is impossible. And again the pain. Ma, the medicine, ma, pain, ma. Then finally, the body fuzzing velvet of the morphine. Fred asks if she has any questions that he can answer for her. She looks at him for a moment with quiet appreciation for his effort. They both know this is a futile struggle with pain. She looks back out the window at the gray day and says, I already know the answers to my questions. There's nothing else I can do for him. A loving, wise teacher once said to me, don't you see that it's all perfect? In this time and place, I can't. I don't want Leonard to be a dying prisoner of cancer, so his mother won't be dying with him. I cannot yet absorb her pain without a struggle. And as we watch her pour the morphine, Fred and I both see the Pietà, the Holy Mother, and the Christ here in this dirty apartment building, in some forgotten project on the outer edges of a Brooklyn most don't want to know exists. Quote, I came to you and you knew me not, end quote. After more discussion of medication and Fred's assurances that he would return soon and the hospice staff was always just a phone call away, we returned to the urine smell of the hallway, again with some resistance. Only this time, we wanted to stay where we had been, in the presence of an open, vulnerable, loving heart. No matter the form, one doesn't leave such a presence easily. Stale urine, now part of the scent of love. We sit in the car, again looking at the street map, Brooklyn, 9:30 a.m. Time for another home visit. Can I do another one? Yeah. Or did that take too long?
Keep going around. If there's time at the end.
Okay.
Go for
Can you
seconds.
break it?
want to take a break for us?
No, I'm thinking of maybe coming back to that, because it's so intense. I don't know if anybody else feels that way. But, and then,
Well, I was trying to be light.
That's Michael at his light.
In
Much
Greece,
less.
when they presented
going.
plays, they would
Yes,
have
yes.
3 dramas and then a ribald comedy.
Yes,
That very,
very reason. Good thing.
so if anybody knows ribald comedy, I think it's time.
Well, Mary's
Do you
got
have one in your pocket?
Actually, 2.
Joe, are you up?
Yeah, it's not a ribald comedy, but it's in a different vein. Anyway, yeah. I probably will not, I'm sure I can't finish it. So just give me, I don't know if 6 minutes is just, and then I'll stop at that point.
6 minutes
Yeah.
has gone by.
You know, I go to this personal growth meeting 3 times a year.
You've written about it.
Well, you'll see. And they told us that we should write a personal myth. So mine is in the form of a myth regarding my life. Okay. No. There was once a being who resided.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
There was once a bee.
There was once a being who resided.
6 minutes.
Yeah, can we stop? Come on. Give her space.
Yeah.
Can you start the 6 minutes now?
Yeah.
Okay. There was once a being who resided in the plane of the gods. This being was neither male nor female, so we will refer to this being as this being. This being was a soul that had never yet been born and never yet incarnated on the human plane, but had been hanging around in the universe, sometimes swinging on a star, lounging on the moon, or floating off to far-off galaxies. Though this being was familiar with the presence of the highest, all-knowing, omnipresent, omniscient being, and that being's closest associates, angels and other heavenly or celestial or galaxial beings, this being was not intimate with any of them. Though this being experienced a sense of some peace and satisfaction, this being was also very lonely and unaware of a greater purpose in life. This being would sometimes look upon the human realm and observe their activities, experiences, and struggles, and it was somehow transmitted that the earth plane was the place to experience great learnings and understandings. Not wanting to simply abandon nor disappear from the higher plane, this being requested an audience with the all-knowing and all-seeing one. This was granted, and this being was given the blessing to travel the many light years away to the earth plane. The great and wise one gave very little information about how to do it, or even about what should be the purpose, instead saying, "You will know. It will come to you. I will be here for consultations on specific questions or situations. At this time, I will not be giving you an overall map nor blueprints." So this being went back to the familiar spots in the universe to observe and to look for an opportunity. Then, as though in a bubble or a crystal ball, the image of a very frightened and unhappy couple came to this being. Since this being had a great deal of compassion, wasn't doing anything else anyway, wanted to help, and also wanted some companionship, this being decided to go to this couple. Let it be said that this being did feel very drawn to the man in the couple, as he had a very sensitive and loving heart. He was just a lost soul without a clue about resource. At that time in the evolution of humankind, misfits such as he were not regarded with kindness. The female was also a lost soul. However, the magnetism was between this being and the man who was to become the father. This being didn't exactly know how to get to them, so this being just stayed open and willing to go with the flow, and then one day felt irresistibly drawn into a powerful wave, like a tsunami, and allowed himself to go with it at times, wondering if he would survive at all or instead be crushed, lose his soulhood, and become simply particles of matter for the rest of eternity. At the end of the tsunami, this being found her himself implanted in the womb of the mother. And now she had become differentiated into a girl. Being in the womb environment was so unlike the freedom of her former existence. This was like being in a dark, dark cave with toxic chemicals all around her. She had never been in such a small and limiting space, and she didn't like it at all. Once again, she thought she might die here. However, she still felt the magnetism of the man, and she wanted to meet him and be in his presence. So she made the decision to stay to see where it would take her. She decided to go for the adventure. When the time came and it was obvious that she could no longer stay in the cave because she had grown too large, she began to be impelled towards a tunnel. This was extremely frightening and even painful, and she once again began to question the decision to come here. She wanted to go back in the other direction, but it was much too late. She could have chosen to die, but the survival instinct was stronger, and she went forth. Once having arrived, she met the woman and the man who had become her parents. She could see that they were both like children and not capable of guiding and raising a child in a healthy way. The woman in particular was filled with fear and unable to offer love nor any other sort of nurturing. The man was capable of love, and he did transmit that, but he was in great pain and loneliness himself, and would attempt to lessen that pain by ingesting great amounts of sugar in order to get the sweetness he needed. Though he felt very connected to the girl, the mother became very jealous. She wanted the girl to herself, so she guarded her and drove away the man. The man did not know where to go. He was in great grief, especially at the loss of his child. He eventually found a small room in the home of an ignorant woman who rented rooms for a living. She offered no succor, no food, no compassion, and so he deteriorated in mind and body, ingesting even more sugar than before, and in this manner he managed to end his life. He had diabetes. The mother was now the sole parent of the girl and happy to have her to herself. The girl sensed the great loss, but the mother continued to shield her and minimize the impact, not even really informing her and not allowing her to participate in the death rituals. She instructed her to be happy and to not have any sad feelings. The mother had lost her own mother at the age of 13 and had a large hole in her heart over that, but it caused her to close down and be insensitive to her own feelings and those of the child. She was unable to tolerate any type of what she experienced as extreme feelings. She allowed only a very narrow space for any type of self-expression. She criticized the girl for being noisy, messy, loud, joyful, sad, sexual, angry, and all the rest. In addition, the community members were also narrow-minded. I'll just finish this paragraph.
Sure.
In addition, the community members were also narrow-minded and did not like differences. The land itself was flat, without ocean nor mountains. There was a great lake, but walls had been built around it for fear that the children might wander off and find that there were expanses, possibilities, and mysteries. That would be much too frightening and threatening to the adults, and also the children might leave them. The girl found herself in an alien space without allies. She had no siblings and no animal companions. Some of it.
What is that? Where was it? Where is that from? Did you publish that someplace, or is that?
No.
Sure.
This is the first time I've ever read it aloud to
Wow.
anybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
I felt like I was listening to a Native American mythology.
Really?
Totally. That's what I thought it was. Like that you had written up some Native American mythology. Very cool.
Not a ribald comedy.
No. Okay. Our next storyteller.
Just gonna let it go by tonight, next time.
As many of you know, and some of you don't know, and if you don't know, I'll tell you, I have spent the last 2.5 months living with dear friends of mine, helping the couple deal with one of them who had brain cancer. So I've been doing caregiving for 24/7. It's really a gift. It's really been a pleasure to do. But one of the things that it triggered for me was a story from my background. Many of you don't know, but I lost both parents to cancer. I lost my mother in 1990 to lung cancer, and my father to a version of lung cancer in 2000. And he had a lung cancer and prostate cancer, which metastasized, etc. The beautiful piece of it was that when my father was still alive and living in the house he had spent his whole adult life in, my sisters and I were able to be there for him and take care of him for the last couple of months in his life. And we're a family that likes to drink, as you probably know. So I was working full-time, my other sister was working full-time, so we'd go up for long weekends and be there, but there were two other sisters who were there all the time. And we would spend time chatting about things and visiting about memories, and towards the end, he would start to get a little weaker and start to get a little, but he was always chipper and he was always full of stories. And you might know from a little bit of my personality that his nickname was Pinky, and he was full of mischief and he was full of life and vitality. So we would all, while he was in pain and in difficulty and we were taking care of him, we'd all cook meals and chat and have drinks together and have a lovely time, etc. And one night in July, he was beginning to think it was getting close to the end, and so he said, I really think we did a beautiful job of spending time with him and letting every kid have space with him to say goodbye, go over memories, tell him how much we loved him, how much we appreciated what he did for us, etc. And he wasn't very sentimental, but he really liked those sessions, and we'd hold his hand and we'd talk to him, etc. So one night we all were assembled in the bedroom having wine, and he had a glass of wine. He would just hold it to his lips and just sort of sip a little bit, but not much, and he wasn't eating much, and we thought, okay. This was a Thursday night or Friday night, but we thought, okay. And he said, I think I'm getting close to time, and I think it's just time for me to pass over. And we all said, fine, no more pain, we're all fine with it. And we had sort of sipped wine with him that night, and then we went and didn't want anything to eat, hadn't eaten for a while. We went in the next room, had some supper, came back, each in turn kissed him goodnight, wished him well. All very kind of sad, but he had a lovely life. He was in his bedroom, in his bed, where he had spent all his adult life, where my mother passed, etc. So we said, okay, it's getting time, and we've all had plenty of time with him. We've all said how much we loved him, how wonderful he was, and what we did. So we all went to bed that night, in a way, very sad and very respectful and very quiet. But sort of at peace that we'd really done what we could do. If he did pass that night, he wouldn't be in any more pain, and we wouldn't have to worry about medication and stuff like that. And I woke up the next morning, I heard this sound, and my sisters heard the sound, so we all went running into his bedroom. And we went, all four of us, or five of us running in, he went, "Oh shit! I'm alive today, and I have to keep going." From then on, we had more fun and more time to move forward.
Yeah, it's very good.
Oh shit, I'm alive.
That was good.
Meditation.
He planned that good. He planned that moment. That's funny.
Yeah, who's next?
It's like little big
I'm
man.
passing
Now let's
today.
pass it.
Mary?
Okay. Well, I think everybody had read my little rap for Hillary, and since we're not doing politics,
Oh, yeah, we gotta make an exception.
I don't know.
For you, Mary, whatever you want.
Well, most people have heard it already or read it or whatever. But all right. Well, our last chance to.
Frank hasn't.
Yeah,
That's
hasn't
true.
either.
Okay.
Did you read it?
I sent it out.
Tom hasn't.
Oh, I've been.
Okay. Well,
I'm missing a lot
it
of
doesn't
our
take
emails.
very long, so then I get to read a little short piece, maybe. But anyhow, okay, I need some background. Yeah, I'll give you the tempo that I
Give us
need.
the tempo.
Okay, this was the
Give
first
us a
rap
beat.
I ever wrote. And I was inspired by having seen Hamilton on Broadway. And this is just for the micro jam that Steve Lewis has every summer. He invited some of us to come, and so we had 92 words to put together whatever we wanted to. So anyhow, this is for Hillary, and let's see. Don't make it any faster. I won't be able to read. Let me see if I can do it.
Follow Vicky.
Okay. Critical election, Supreme Court selection, reforming immigration, crucial for our nation. Assault rifles easy buy, innocent people sadly die. Climate change is here and real. House of Reps has got to deal. Women's rights still far to go. Hillary is in the know. Healthcare improvements on the table. She's the one can make it stable. Foreign policy, she can rock. Keep us from a laughing stock. Experience so deep and wide. Her resume can't be denied. No one more prepared than she in all of U.S. history. Faultless, no. Best choice, yo. Yo, yo, yo. Well, we tried.
It was great.
Okay. So then I have a short piece that some of you may have heard, but anyway. It's called Coincidence in Florence. Shortly after my father died in 1989, a story appeared in a column written by Patricia Argiro in the New Paltz Times. She was a local woman who had attended SUNY New Paltz and who wrote a column called Branching in the local paper. In this edition of the paper, she wrote about an amazing encounter she had had while traveling with her young son in Italy some years prior. Patricia and her son were visiting a museum in Florence one day. After a couple of hours in the museum, they were exhausted and hungry. They searched for an informal spot where they could sit down and get a bite to eat. They passed by a few restaurants before they chose one that looked nice. They entered a little trattoria and looked for a place to sit down. All the tables were taken, and they were about to leave when Patricia spied a couple of seats at a table where a gentleman was sitting by himself. She approached him and asked if they could sit at his table. He agreed, and they sat down with him. They started to chat and found out that he was an American from the Midwest. He was a teacher, and they began to discuss education. At one point, she asked if he had ever had a favorite teacher who had made a difference in his life. She explained that she had had an English professor in college who had given her a real appreciation for and love of literature. She talked about how this professor had made Shakespeare's plays come alive for her. Then he said that he had had a similar experience in a high school in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, where his English teacher had inspired him to love literature as well, particularly Shakespeare. They continued talking about these favorite teachers and found such similarities in them that Patricia asked the man what his teacher's name was. He said it was Mr. Jacobson. She was very surprised and said that her favorite teacher's name was Dr. John Jacobson. They each described their teachers and realized they were talking about the very same man, my dad.
Well, that's a good lead into my story because my mother went to the same college where your dad went, to Carleton.
Carleton.
And my story, but a little preface. I grew up in a rather unhappy home. I can remember as an maybe 70-year-old standing in my hallway privately, kind of knocking my head against the wall, trying to decide which of my parents should die so that the rest of us could be happy. And I had a very significant dream, I think when I was 5 years old, because I remember the bedroom I was in, that every member of my family was dead and in a coffin. And I walked by looking in at them and I woke up crying. That none of my family is dead. But anyway, we all did survive. And my mother felt and declared that marriage was the enslavement of the middle-class woman. And she kept her Carleton diploma over the stove. Always was pointing out to me the things that were wrong with my father, which hurt me tremendously, but sadly I could see that she was quite right. He wasn't supportive, and he was pretty selfish. But anyway, I went away to college, and I was not adverse to romance, but never managed to have anything stick until I came across this book by Joyce Brothers, How to Get Whatever You Want Out of Life. I have no idea how it came into my possession, but I started reading it. And I said, okay, what, she says, most people don't get what they want out of life because they don't know what they want. And she had a method of a quick list where you, without thinking about it, write down 3 things. You put it on a piece of paper, fold it, put it away. The next week, you do the same thing, put it away. And I would number my lists, and then at the end of 6 or 8 weeks, you look at all of them and say, okay, what is consistent in this, and what has lasted? And I was pretty amazed that a committed relationship was one of the things that was on my list. Oh my God, where did that come from? And then, and then you went through a list of what were the last 3 people you have cared about, 3 characteristics that they had. All right, I did this. Rebellion, rebellious nature. Music, athletic. Okay, what lasted? Okay, well I thought, all right, I don't know where this is going, but anyway, it sort of opened up my mind in a way that I had never been opened up before about some of these things. And then one night, our minister had challenged the Methodist wimps. The Reformed Church had challenged the Methodist wimps to a softball tournament. And I was in the softball tournament, rather inadequate member. But I had gone away to Minnesota on vacation, came back the night of the game, and I trotted out to the field as fast as I could go, and took my place in left field, right field. Right field. Okay. I saw this guy over in left field who had a red bandana. I thought, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. Anyway, that was the night I caught a fly ball. Oh. Couldn't believe it. Fell down on the ground. Oh my God, I did this. Anyway, afterward we were having, food or something, and this person walked up to me and said, "Hello." And I said, I sort of had met him before. I tried to get his son to join junior choir, and he had rejected me. But anyway, so later on, I got a phone call from this person who asked me out, and I said, oh, well, okay. And we made a date, and then I called up and I postponed it, and I said, oh, well, something has come up. Could we make it a little bit later? And he said, okay, sure. And so then we had our first date, which was another story, which I won't tell right now. But anyway, it was Boyd.
Is that the end of your story? You're still talking?
Am I still talking? Well, no, but I could tell you about our first date, which was very funny, because it was...
I can imagine.
Well, first of all, he asked me...
It was July 1st, wasn't it, the date?
Our date for July 1st might have been, I don't know. We used to celebrate it all the time, go to the ball field and have a picnic. But anyway, he asked me to meet him in the Student Prince parking lot in, where is that? I don't know.
Stone Ridge.
Stone Ridge, which was
On
halfway.
the left-hand side.
Oh, halfway between. So I said, oh, okay. So I drove out there and met him, and he said, well, let's take your car. I don't have much gas in my car. Because we wanted to go to a diner down the road. I said, okay. So we went in, and we sat down in a booth, and he said, well, I have enough money for pie, 1 piece of pie and 1 cup of coffee, but I wasn't able to get the bank. And I said, oh, let me go out to my car. I always have money on the floor of my car. Let me go see what I've got. So I went to my floor, gathered enough coins up to come and say, hey, here, I have enough for pie and coffee. And that was our first date. And I thought, here is somebody very much like me. Simpatico. So it was an auspicious first date.
Have you graduated to a hamburger yet?
graduated to a hamburger.
She's vegetarian.
Well,
Oh.
veggie burger.
I became vegetarian. So anyway.
Are you talking, Barbara? I don't know. I'm trying to decide whether to talk or not. Okay, I'll tell a story. So this is actually a story about my father. So my dad was in World War II, so he's from that generation. And my dad grew up, my dad came from Lithuania.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Came over when he was around 5. And everyone in the family teases him that he had gotten lost in Paris. And he was like missing for like a day or two or something. But somehow he found his way back to the family. And they grew up kind of poor in Paterson, New Jersey. He never went to college or anything, but he was always a smart guy. So after in the war, they were out in Paso Robles, California, and all the women, went out to Paso Robles with their husbands, and they're all living in these apartments. And my dad and his pals, they used to sneak off the base all the time, and I guess go visit their wives. And I hear all these stories and stuff. So my dad was like some kind of sergeant or lieutenant or something, but he worked in these offices, and when it was time to get their gear and get out of there because the war was done or whatever, and they had gone to the Philippines and come back, and they were out in Paso Robles, he got all his 4 buddies, all their paperwork all together so they could all leave together because they're all going back to Paterson, New Jersey. So I guess he probably did some illegitimate stuff because he's like that kind of guy. They got everybody's paperwork all organized so they all could leave. And they all got on this airplane. And while they're in the air, some higher up comes up to my dad with a gun. I guess you could have a gun on an airplane at those days. Pulls out this gun and says to my dad, "Give me all your papers," whatever the name is that, to get released. "Give all your papers to me." And my dad's like, what. So he had to hand over all the release papers for all 4 men. And then they landed in North Carolina, and they had to spend another week. And my dad ran around again for the whole week to get all 4 people's papers together again so they could get discharged. So we always laughed about the story, like we could never figure out, like, why in the world would this man take my dad's papers, pull out a gun on an airplane, and all that stuff, So this is a little sad. So anyway, then my dad passed away at some point, obviously, but the night before he passed away, he had already fallen, his arm was in a sling, and you could tell he had quite, he was getting downhill. But we didn't know he was going to pass away. And I had just brought him some sweets. He had a real sweet tooth, so I brought him some stuff from the bakery. I visited him at the assisted living. My mom and him were there, and we're all talking and yapping. And he loved to tell stories, so he's telling us some story about something. And then he stops and he says to me, "Barbara, why do you think that man pulled a gun on me on the airplane?" And I remember I was on my way to go see a movie. I had made a plan. My daughter was with me. She was kind of young. And I thought to myself, I could explain to my dad about karma and about maybe the reason why this happened, because something worse could have happened, and by having his papers taken away at that moment, he got protected. He had to stay someplace for a week. Maybe instead of dying, he got protected from something. All these different things I could have said to my dad. But I didn't think my dad would listen to any of them because it was more like Eastern philosophy. And so I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say a word. I didn't give him anything. I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, "I don't know, Dad, I just don't know." And then, that evening he passed away. And I always, obviously I just felt always so guilty that I never gave him more of an explanation. And, so anyway, that's my story.
Jonathan, are you talking?
I have a story.
Jonathan, can we
what
get
about
Jim just to
Darshana?
read?
Frank, you had a story.
Darshana didn't
Right?
And you had
Darshana.
something funny in the
Darshana.
hall.
I have a couple of very short, funny things that I could say. I could tell stories, but any stories about my family probably aren't fit for mixed company. But
Yeah.
not for the reason that you think. And other stories would be how
We're not
battles were
mixed
fought
winter,
and
baby.
won, and they take more than 6 minutes. So I'll just throw out one for your amusement. Consider this one ribald. time of year is right too. Young couple are having their first Thanksgiving dinner, and they've invited all the relatives over. And they've never done any cooking before, so they've got the cookbook out, and they're trying to get the turkey ready. And the directions in the cookbook say remove the giblets from the body cavity. So the young wife sticks her hand in the body cavity, and this look of surprise and then a smile comes across her face as she says to her husband, "Must be a tom turkey."
Good, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I can imagine that's the first time I made it.
With stew.
Well. Okay.
You got it. I mean, you only hear about the Battle of Midway, but I don't think you did.
Darshana, are you going to tell us?
No, I want to pass.
Jim's got a real short one that he wrote.
I think we have time for everybody to do their thing.
Okay, this is a special request from Dave, and Mary and I were in the same writing experience, and we had to an assignment in 97 words to write, respond to. Tomorrow was the first day of the rest of my life as Anne, and this is what I wrote. 97 words. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of my life as an old man. Still, it seems so sudden, so unexpected. Sure, there were telltale signs and clues. Sagging here, lack of control there, forgetting everywhere. They say 30-something athletes lose a step. I lost count of my lost steps. But still, why me? Why not me? Sweet acceptance. Old age has its consolations. Expectations are low. Gray hair is like a big eraser on top of my head. Make a mistake. It's okay, Poppy. Sure, it's patronizing. Hey, so what? Old man I am. Damn.
Jonathan, are you going to tell a story?
I am. And you have another one. Okay. I wrote it out so that I could keep track of things. And I'm being high tech. I got it here on this device. So I was 16 years old and a senior in high school. That young age was a testament to my parents' practical and impatient desire to get me graduated, out of the house at an affordable state college, and off of the family coffers. I was the youngest of 3 kids. We'd all been pushed through the school system in haste, the same way, with the benefit of the 2-year SP program, and if anybody remembers that.
Yes, SP, sure.
3 years of junior high school in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Seventh and ninth.
Right, and I was already a year younger. They put me in a private kindergarten to get the ball rolling. So, I also had the added distinction of being an unplanned 3rd child. Oops. So so that's the background. My siblings were both off to their respective state schools. My brother Matthew was off. He's 2 years older. Was off to Michigan State. My sister Erica, 3 years older, was off to Indiana University. Okay, here's the scene. It's early spring of my senior year in high school. Both of my siblings are gone off to college. I'm home alone. Both of my parents work in Manhattan, which is an hour's commute away from our house in Far Rockaway. We were the last stop on the A train over the Jamaica Bay, 5 miles before subway stops. With my age differential, I didn't really fit in with the kids in my grade very well, so my social life revolved around a cast of outcasts and freaks, with mild but persistent drug use, something of a background constant. My very close friend Matthew was going to be here tonight, but he was allergic to animals. So. My parents decided to take a vacation in the spring of that school year. I would be left to my own devices for a week or more. I can't remember exactly. And the primary injunction from my father, not bringing other kids into the house, and definitely don't have a party. Off my parents went, and first weekend night, party time. I opened the house to friends of friends, and their hangers-on. Among the lower lifes included was a friend of Fred Wagenstein's. Now, Fred was a tough Irish kid, the son of the Cub Scouts' den mother, and he'd briefly been a friend when we were much younger and more innocent. Fred, we weren't friends anymore. Fred didn't show up to the party, but this kid did, and it turned out he said, a runaway. And could he crash there that night? Sure, I said, very accommodating. I'm going to go to school in the morning. You can just let yourself out. I came back from school fairly early. He's still there, but says he needs to run to town to do an errand. Lucky for me, I noticed the missing savings account passbooks from the Jamaica Savings Bank. Not where they should be. Grab a broomstick, run through Bayswater to the bank. There he is in the line with the withdrawal slips in his hand. Threats. He's acting innocent. I get the bank books from him, but I have to awkwardly walk back to the house with him because he has to get his stuff out of the house. So we have to make our way back to the house, and he leaves. I get him out, but I have to go someplace for the rest of the afternoon. I lock the door, but oops, again, I didn't close the windows, which only had screens in them because it was early summer. By my return later that day, the kid and Fred Wagenstein had broken into the house, taken the bank books again, and also rifled through file cabinets, my parents' night tables, and all their stuff. Fearing my father's wrath, which could be extreme, I reported to him merely that the house had been burglarized, and this wouldn't have been the first burglary that we'd had in our house in Far Rockaway. However, I did confide to my mom the fuller truth, and she even got the police department detective to go in on the lie with my father, the lie of omission, not telling the whole story. But within a couple of days, there were various contradictions, inconsistencies, and it led to the truth coming out, and the punishment began. He was pissed, especially about the lie from me and my mom, and although I think, in retrospect, that I avoided any corporal punishment, he made sure to remind me that I was dirt for weeks on end. Standing at the front door with him one night, his reminder that I remained dirt solidified the idea that had been forming in my head for days. Freedom at last from his tyranny and authoritarian self-controlled, self-centered control, I'd run away. So, next day, a full canvas duffel bag, I left a written note and an audio tape recording.
Wow.
Wow.
With music?
Right, and I outlined 16 years of my grievances right there.
Wow.
All, I had my chance. And I went to my best friend's house. That was Matthew, the guy who was going to be here. He lived around the corner. Where his crazy neighbor promptly offered me tokes of some very, very strong Thai weed. That particular person had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and was their housemate, or shared it because it was a two-family house. I wasn't going to stay there because my parents would surely look there, so I decided I would crash at Tracy's mom's apartment since they didn't really know Tracy. Tracy was a fire eater and a magician with whom I briefly shared Rebecca Greenspan from Bell Harbor as girlfriend. We both were going out with her simultaneously for about a month. I decided I'd graduate high school, which was just a month to go, then I'd skip college and maybe, hitchhike to Indiana where my older sister lived. My summer job at Camp Jeanette, which was a camp for handicapped teens and adults, looked to be in jeopardy as they said they couldn't hire me without my parents' involvement. I had been accepted to 2 state schools, Indiana University and University of Colorado Boulder. The latter had been my first choice. Hippies, cool countercultural stuff, mountains. Meanwhile, Midwestern Indiana had just been a backup plan. So how my parents managed not to locate me at the high school, I still can't figure it out, even if it was a zoo with 3,500 or more students. Since my plan was to graduate high school, I'm pretty sure I attended classes at least some of the time during that period. But they did locate me 2 weeks later at a party at my friend Matthew's house. They probably had been in touch with his mom, who would have told them about the planned party and the likelihood that I was going to be there. So my older brother was back from spring break from college. My folks sent him over, since it was just around the block. He came armed with a letter that was mostly written by my mom, but the smaller part was written by my dad, displayed the only real humility I can ever recall from him. Not quite saying he'd been wrong about anything, but that he'd be willing to forgive and wanted me back. Of course, my mom's letter displayed a lot of suffering. That made me feel very bad. So I didn't really have it in me to throw away the standard life plan, so I told my brother to tell them I'd be back tomorrow night. When I came back home the next day, Dad wasn't all that talkative. It was pretty much something about how we'd all learned something from this, no real further discussion, and it was a very confusing time for me. So I went to Camp Jened for my last summer before college after all, but I was shaken up and unconfident and felt like I needed to be near someone I knew, not in a totally strange college town at age 16. So I changed my college plans and decided to go to Indiana University, where my older sister Erica lived, instead of moving to Colorado. Big fork in the road. Would I have been exposed to the blues and pop piano players that I met in Bloomington, Indiana? And would I have started playing piano? Would I have felt that after 2 years in the Midwest, I really didn't belong where I was and have gone back to study psychology? On the East Coast at SUNY Purchase, where I met Richie Davidson, my teacher, and got introduced to meditation, which is probably another story. Every action and reaction, every road taken and not taken, a load of crazy karma. I did end up moving back east from Indiana, studying psychology at Purchase, meeting Professor Richie Davidson, who introduced me and other students to meditation, to the Insight Meditation Society. That latter became an occasional 10-day refuge in the storm for me, and I attended silent retreats there every year or two throughout my 20s and sporadically thereafter. My need to meditate for sanity has waxed and waned, but it has led me to get to know you all and participate in your beautiful morning practice, for which I guess I can be ever grateful to Fred Wagenstein and his runaway friend.
Did you say that Fred Wagenstein was Irish?
He was, yes.
Wagenstein?
That's what I remember. I don't know. Maybe it was a mixed family.
Oh, Wagenstein, maybe, or Mick Wagenstein.
Mick Wagenstein.
Oh, Wagenstein. Oh, Wagenstein.
It does seem odd. I never thought about that. It seems pretty weird.
That's a great.
Maybe he just acted Irish.
Yeah, that's it. Those are.
There were a lot of tough Irish kids in the area. So. Does anybody want to go for seconds? Mike? Okay.
We gotta go see.
Michael, can I ask, is this a continuation of the same story? No.
No, this is light and airy.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Comparatively.
Okay, great.
Darting, pushing, shoving, no one acknowledges anyone else. Everyone moves purposely forward, head down, bent over slightly, jostling, bodies lightly bouncing off each other's space. Everyone in a rush, going as fast as they can, but very controlled. Don't want to invade or be invaded. Have to get to work, no time to get caught in anything, become part of a story on the 6 o'clock news. Always flow, go, next turn, go, step, go, move to the right, go, now left, go, slow down, go, now forward, go, quickly, go, go, keep moving, go. All this done with inside a screeching, wailing, concrete echo chamber of trains starting, stopping, doors opening, closing, loudspeakers loud and unintelligible, many secured within their own iPods, being somewhere else as they direct their bodies through the maze. I climbed the last stairs to the platform for my train. Crowded in on all sides, there's a slight resentful body murmur at the person coming down that what had just become the up staircase. An imperceptible movement by each person at the last moment that allows them to come down as we all move up. Anything to keep the flow going. Each of us is in this alone, getting through the others to get to where we're going. Up on the platform, there's no space, the train being late. Platform is backed up and we all come to a stop. No flow, now the static wait. There is movement across the platform and on others, but we are frozen here at the mercy of the MTA and their allotment of trains. I begin to think of some of the trains I've waited for in my life. A sleeper train when I was a child that would take all night to get to a place called Maine, where I would be in a sleepover camp for a few weeks. The train into the city when I was in high school, delivering furs into the fur market and getting others from my father, a suburban retail furrier. The train that was delayed in Bodh Gaya because the monsoon had washed out some of the track in India, and now an A train on the way to see my daughter uptown. Slowly each person moves toward the edge to position themselves for when the train does come. There's a very careful assessing of space around oneself, as in a traffic jam. Be close enough to no one else can fit in, but far enough away to give oneself wiggle room. We finally all come to a rest. I glance around and scan at the sea of all of us all. Just folks trying to get to work. Nothing special, no photo ops for politicians, no fashion shoots for models or movies. My eyes meet another scanner, a black woman in her 40s, arranged, carefully groomed, costumed. Her eyes show disinterest, habitual disdain, and an implicit threat. You do not want to mess with me. It must be learned and taught and practiced 1,000 times over every day here in the city. Her eyes move on us with a slow closing and opening of the lids, which dismisses me and on the next unimportant person not worth focus. It is so institutionalized that I don't take it personally, since it isn't personal. It's all part of the tedious passing show to be tolerated until something of interest happens. How many Buddhas have come and gone unnoticed through my life while I've been busy on some quest or another? I came to you and you knew me not. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of a cane on the steps is heard through the din. A slight, young, unseeing woman is making her careful way up to the platform. The bustle continues all around her, and she finally arrives. A moment later, the train arrives and the surge begins, everyone intent on getting on the train as soon as possible. As this happens, she of the disdainful gaze and I stay still. The blind woman is between us, and we create a protective barrier around her. I gently touch her elbow and say, I'll help you. The lady of the gaze moves in on the other side, and we usher the woman on, gently moving others aside as we do. An irritated young man looks at me sharply, for I've dared to intrude on his well-defined space. He turns, glares, and is ready to do battle in case he has been dissed. He sees it all in a glance. A light smile, a nod, and he moves to give her more space. She moves her cane to find the pole and reaches for it. A breath releases. She has made it this far. I give a small squeeze to her elbow. She nods slightly in my direction. I spend the ride wondering about us all and how we become so formed in our lives, so caught in our inner monologues. Then along comes the tapping of a cane to ask us, what are we doing? Who are we busy being? Glancing around the car, my eyes again meet those of the first woman. She stops for a moment, nods to me with kindly eyes and about 1/10 of a smile, then goes back behind the curtain as she becomes again a tough, very together black woman not to be messed with. A few stops later, they get off and I go back to wondering, who are we? What's going on here? Can I just say a very brief thing? This is the first time I've ever read anything that I've written. And thank you guys for being, my virgin audience.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who has? Oh, Pooja. Let's try Pooja on to.
Okay.
That's important.
Pooja wants to read again.
Okay, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, this is called The Wedding Dress. Who ever heard of an orange wedding dress? That's a ridiculous idea, my mother challenged me defiantly. For years I'd been the good girl. I'd happily lived the inclusive Christian values my parents held dear. So they hadn't thought twice about encouraging me to travel abroad, to expand my horizons, starting with a school exchange to Paris. When Catholics and Protestants did not see eye to eye, I became part of a Roman Catholic family, while Catherine, their daughter, came to Edinburgh to live in my Presbyterian home. This led to student work camps, hitchhiking in other countries in Western Europe, and then to forays behind the Iron Curtain to be involved in Christian Marxist dialogues in Eastern Europe. All acceptable to my parents. They seemed proud of my adventurous spirit that led me to spend 20 months in the USA on an international exchange program for teachers and social workers. But the cat was let loose among the pigeons when I journeyed to Sri Lanka and thence to India to a meditation camp led by Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. I returned to Scotland wearing orange clothes with a mala around my neck and a new spiritual name, Ma Prem Puja, which they then refused to use. They felt judged and ashamed that I no longer adhered to the beliefs of my forefathers, so battle lines were drawn, until my mother realized they were pushing me further away, and they might lose me. She rose to all of her 5'4" height, and to my 6'3" father, she wisely announced, "We're not going to let that man," meaning Bhagwan, "destroy our family." And that was that. A sort of truce was reached. They kept hoping I'd get over this misguided aberration, especially when my travels took me repeatedly to America. Wishful thinking on their part. I fell in love with an American, a divorced man, a limelight case, my mother said. With his bright orange hair, loud voice, and exuberant energy, he would dominate any gathering. Used goods, my much-loved dad declared. What makes you think he won't leave you? That I didn't want to hear. But then I sat him down for an overdue conversation about love, loving, sexual possessiveness, and marriage. For the first time in my life, I stood my ground in open disagreement with my Presbyterian minister father. "You're just a whore," he intoned. Despite that painful jab, I held nothing back about my beliefs. No, the influence of Rajneesh, the greatest catalyst in my life, had not and was not going away. And I'm going to marry Bob. "Why don't you just go away and get married in a Hindu temple?" he asked. "No, I want to get married here in Scotland and by you." And as an afterthought, I threw in, "And I'll be wearing orange." Now, I knew that for sure, but they didn't. I had looked all over Edinburgh for an orange wedding dress. Nothing remotely suitable. Then in London, after trekking from one large store to another, I almost gave up. But later, heading for the small, expensive designer boutiques, I saw it, a one-of-a-kind, on sale, with a sunburst at the waist and flowing freely from my shoulders in the back, with a turban hat to match, a perfect, elegant fit.
Very good. That's great, Bonnie. Very good.
Well, thank you, Jonathan.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan.
It's your other hope for more, John. I think we're, maybe we'll do it again.
Good idea. I'd rather spend an evening doing this than looking at Netflix.
Absolutely.
I'm amazed you never read those before.
The guy that I was with taught hundreds of workshops, and he always reads the ring to his mother.
I was admiring your ring.
Until tonight.
I got this up at
Do you know what that is?
It's a greeny, yeah, what do we call it?
Thank you, Pooja.
Lies was so.
I could totally relate to that.
I haven't yet
Oh my God.
had the guts to write to do something like that off the cuff.
Oh, I have a million of them. I guess because I do speak in between my songs, so I guess.
Yeah.
It's just breaking up the